Namaste, everybody. Nice to see everyone here. Today, we have gathered to discuss the role of pain and suffering in our life and how to eliminate suffering. So, we are going to take up three topics: role of mind in pain and suffering, pain may be inevitable, but suffering is optional, and how to end suffering permanently. So, we take up these topics of interest every other Sunday. Our good friend Dr. Kamal Kanji Goyal, he has requested me to speak about several topics that pertain to diet purification, to mind purification, to self realization, which is the motto, or mission of Sattva program. So we run this initiative called Sattva, SATTV .life, Sattva.life, through which we run these awareness programs where we share our experience with participants. We have experienced that through diet purification, our mind gets purified. And as the mind gets purified, our perception becomes more and more and more subtle. In this subtle perception, we get a clear experience of who we are, and we understand what the world is, what we consider to be God, and what we consider to be the way to live, how to live. So these things become clear to us within ourselves. This is something which I personally experienced, and that's why I try to share that with people. Our sisters Pooja and Saili, who are the team Sattva, all of us have experienced these things from within us through dedication to diet purification and consistently following the rules of nature. So we have realized that through diet purification, our mind will get purified. In my personal case, I didn't even know how and why these things happened. So things became clearer from within. It was simply a miracle. That was not what I had started diet purification for. I had started the diet purification only to try to reduce weight. I was a bit too heavy. So I thought by doing the diet purification, by controlling the diet, controlling the portions, I would lose weight. That was the only motivation for me. But then, how mind purification happened, how perception became clearer, even I did not realize. Okay. And then several things started becoming clearer and clearer from within. During our conversations, Dr. Kamal Kant Goyal is like my elder brother. I learned that even he went through a transformation in his own life. In fact, when talking about pain, I don't think anybody here would understand pain and suffering better than Dr. Goyal himself. Because if you hear his story, you will be flabbergasted. For 30 years, he took painkiller medicines because he could not bear the pain. He had a disease which only he can tell. He is the MD doctor, I'm not. Fancy name for a disease. Okay. He did all kinds of things to try to correct that situation. Ultimately, he realized that he had to change his entire lifestyle, and most importantly, he had to focus on purifying his diet. So he purified his diet, not just the physical food we eat, but also the kinds of thoughts we entertain. That's the subtle diet which we feed our mind with. When we purify these two things, then the internal natural state of balance within us manifests itself. You see, disease is merely dis-ease. So there is a disturbance in ease. That is called disease. The physical manifestation of disease is actually a much later stage. Before that, a lot of things within our body go wrong. Before that, disease will manifest itself. If we go down or go back and try to remove the causes of those disease, then the manifestation of the disease automatically disappears. And then the original state of balance, the inherent state of balance is manifested naturally. That is what happens through the process of diet purification. All right. So let's talk about pain and suffering. What is pain? Pain is something we feel when there is a difference between what is the natural state and what is not the natural state. Okay, so what happens is, by either knowingly or unknowingly or by accident, we get into a situation which becomes painful. So let me give you an example of an accident. Say I am walking down the street and there is a big rock or maybe there is a pothole and I don't see it for some reason because I'm watching my phone and I'm reading WhatsApp messages or whatever, and I trip and I fall down. Okay, then what will happen? Then I will get injured. Say I will get a bruise or a scratch on my knee. What will that do to me? Suddenly, that portion of my body will start paining, or I will experience pain in that portion of my body. See, what happens is, let's go one step further. Say I have a heavier fall and maybe I break a bone in my leg. Okay. What will happen in that case? The place where there is a break in the bone, that place will become swollen. Okay. And it will hurt like hell. The pain will be unbearable. So what will I do? I will probably just sit down, or I will keep that portion of my leg steady and not move that at all. Okay. Two things have happened. Number one, there is a swelling around that place. Okay. When there is a swelling around that place, the physical swelling will prevent the portion of that leg which is broken from moving. Okay. Because if it were to move, then there will be an internal injury which will aggravate the injury from within, which we won't even know. Okay. So because of the swelling, the place becomes essentially immobile. That is nature's way of keeping that place in the same position. Okay. And then why does it pain? It pains because whenever there is a pain in any part of our body, our attention goes there. Okay. So when my attention goes to the place where there is a pain, then that attention focuses my body's energy to that location. This focusing of energy at the location of the pain will help heal that location faster. That is what happens. So you may have noticed that if you sit in front of the computer screen, then over time your eyes will become red. So if you don't rest your eyes, if you don't sleep during the night, if you are working late at night, then over time your eyes will become red, because our eyes are getting strained by watching the screen for a long duration. Therefore, the body will send blood supply to that region. Therefore, the capillaries in the eyes will become wider and then it will become reddish. Okay. Through the blood supply, the oxygen is going to that area. Okay. Oxygen is called prana vayu in Sanskrit or in Hindi or in Marathi. Prana vayu means it is taking the prana from the heart to wherever it is required. So wherever there is a need, the blood supply, the blood circulation to that area is increased, because the thing needs to get healed faster, isn't it? So in nature, pain will serve these purposes. If we understand the purpose of pain, if we understand why it is necessary, because the pain is helping us heal. The pain is making sure that we are paying attention to the place where there is a pain. That is the reason for us to have pain. So physically, pain is necessary. So for example, if I fall down, if I break my leg and there is no pain, then I will aggravate that injury even more, because there is no pain. So nature has devised the sensation of pain to tell us, to teach us that if there is pain in a certain location, then take a look at it. Focus your attention there and see why the pain exists. Try to remove the causes of the pain, and the pain will be removed, isn't it? Now, what has happened? Pain will not go away. Okay, pain will be experienced. In fact, pain is even necessary to be experienced. But if we understand, if we learn that the pain is trying to teach us something, if we learn that lesson, then the pain will not result in suffering. Suffering will result when we take the pain and we start crying because of it. Okay, instead of trying to figure out why that pain is happening, if we just get too involved in the pain, if we get emotionally involved in the pain, then we will become unhappy. Then from within we will get painful. Okay, there is no reason for us to, I mean, of course, pain will happen and we have to bear the pain. Sometimes the pain may be unbearable, and what you may want to do is to just relax, sit back, take a deep breath, or even lie down and even take a painkiller, but not move. So at times you may have to take painkillers, but while you are doing that, you also have to go back and try to figure out why that pain is happening in the first place. So if we learn something from that painful experience, then the pain will happen, but suffering will not happen. So therefore, pain may be inevitable and it may even be necessary, but suffering is not inevitable. Suffering is optional. So if we learn from our pain, then the suffering is optional. Now, how do you overcome this pain? See, if we have a higher goal, then the lower pain becomes bearable. The most recent example, last week, all of us noticed the last day of the test match in Brisbane, India versus Australia. We had to make 300 and some runs to win on the last day. All 10 wickets were intact, but in the first few balls itself, one of the openers was out, Rohit Sharma. Thereafter, Pujara came to bat at number 3. Pujara played, I think he played 100 balls before he made 10 runs. So in the first 100 balls, I think he made only about 10 runs. During that time, the Australian bowlers tried to attack his body. That was the classic body line series. He must have taken at least 10 to 15 blows on his body. He did not flinch, except only once. I think there was a painful blow on his finger, and immediately he shook his hand because it was unbearable. But other blows he bore on his body, and I'm sure it was extremely painful. But he knew that if he did not defend his wicket, if he lost his wicket, then the team would lose. Okay, so the goal that the team should not lose was a higher goal, and to achieve that higher goal, he was willing to take the pain and the blows on his body, and he, although pain was happening, he took that pain in his stride and he bore it. Okay, so there was a lot of bravery on his part, as well as a lot of, in Sanskrit it is called titiksha. Titiksha means you bear the pain, you tolerate the pain because you have a higher goal in front of you. So when there is a higher goal, then the lower pains become bearable. Okay, so this is once again an analysis of pain, suffering, and how pain happens, how suffering happens, and what we need to do so that the suffering may not happen. So if we have a higher goal and if we don't achieve that goal, then the suffering or the pain will be even worse. So therefore, you are willing to bear this pain. That is what we learned from a very current sort of event of just last week. Many of us or most of us are interested in cricket, so that's why I wanted to give you this example. I also gave you the example of how whenever we have a fracture in any part of our body, that portion will become swollen and it will hurt like hell. So the third topic we wanted to discuss is how to eliminate suffering permanently. You see, suffering will happen only if we identify with the pain. So, Dr. Kamal Kant, our friend here, my elder brother, he's a doctor. He must have seen this many times, or even we might have experienced. Sometimes, if we go to the dentist, then what does the dentist do? The dentist actually gives us an anesthetic wherever he is going to do any work. Okay. Then he works, then you can see what the dentist is doing, but it will not pain you because the nervous system is made numb. So the pain signals from the tooth to the brain have been cut off. That is what the anesthetic does, right? So therefore, the mind is no longer connected with the place where there is a pain or wherever the operation is being or the surgery is being done. Okay. When the connection between the mind and the place in the body where the pain is occurring, if that is broken, then pain is not experienced. Okay. So, what is the role of the mind in all this? If the mind is identified with the pain, only then there is suffering. If the mind is not identified or not connected with the pain, and even if you break that connection chemically through an anesthetic, then there will be no suffering, isn't it? So the mind will suffer only if there is identification with the pain. Okay, that is the role of the mind. Now, through chemical means, we can break the connection between the pain and the mind, right? But if we can break that connection through meditation, two examples in history we have read, or I have read. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. He had apparently a boil in his below his hand, below his arm, underarm. So when the doctor performed the surgery on him, he did not take any anesthetic or anything, and they just removed the whatever boil he may have had there. Right. That is how, or after that, he started being called as the Loha Purush or the Iron Man of India. That was Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Another person was Mahatma Gandhi himself. On him, the appendix operation was performed, appendicitis. And apparently, they opened up his stomach and they did the operation and all that without him getting anesthetized. Just imagine somebody going through that surgery without any anesthetic. But he said, you can go ahead and do it. I'll take my mind off of it. He took his mind off of it. Pain must have happened, but suffering did not happen. So these are the examples of how pain and suffering are connected. Now, how can we eliminate suffering permanently? Why does suffering happen? See, suffering happens because of identification. Suffering happens because of our identification. Now, let's go to the subtler part of this talk, where we will talk about how suffering happens, suffering of the mind. Forget about the body now. Pain has happened. We have talked about the physical pain. What about the mental agonies we go through? Why does that happen? That happens because we have desires. We have desires for certain things to happen or certain things to not happen. Pravrutti or nivrutti. So we want things to go our way. That is the desire we all have, always. We all desire that we should experience the world or we should have an experience of a certain kind. So we will always work towards making sure that that experience happens and also making sure that the opposite experience does not happen. So pleasure and pain. So let's talk about pleasure and pain. So we always want to be experiencing pleasure and we do not want to be experiencing pain. That is how our entire life is designed. That is how we want to live our life, isn't it? Now, if we read the Gita or whatever study I have done of the Gita or whatever I have learned from the Gita, Gita says that Sukha Dukhe Same Krutva Labha Labho Jaya Jayo Tato Yuddhaya Yujjasva Nainam Papam Avapsasi. That's what Bhagwan is telling Arjun. Why was he in pain or why was he suffering? Because during the war, in front of him, Bhagwan told him, or Krishna told him, he took the chariot of Arjuna in front of Dronacharya and Bhishmacharya. Dronacharya is the Guru, and Bhishmacharya is my father's uncle. Now, Dronacharya is not any ordinary Guru. Dronacharya is my Guru. Bhishmacharya is not any ordinary uncle. He is my father's uncle. Okay. So, when there is a sense of attachment to these relations, then when you have to fight against these people, then you will feel the pain of it in your mind, or you will suffer. So therefore, when we have a sense of attachment with this world, during that time, unfortunately, pain will happen. Okay. It also happens when we have a misunderstanding about who we are. So at the time of the war, Arjuna was supposed to be, not supposed to be, but actually he was a warrior. He was there at the battleground to be in the battle, because before the battle, all diplomacy had failed, and the yuddha, or the battle, or the war was thrust upon him. So this was a war in which he had to defend himself. He had to defend his own honor, and he had to defend what was right. So it was a dharma yuddha. Such situations arise in our life all the time. So Mahabharat, or the Mahabharat war, is a historical event. About that there is no doubt, but that history has relevance even for us, even today. We all come up with choices in our life, choices about what is right and what is not right. So to choose what is right, even when it may be unpleasant, that is what the Gita teaches us. Okay. When we take our individual ego out of the situation, then even though the act may be painful, there will not be suffering. That is what the Gita teaches us. That is what I have learned from the Gita. So, this is how, if we want to end suffering permanently, then we need to understand who we are at any given time and do the duty that comes to us naturally at that time. And after doing that duty, we should dedicate the results of all of our actions at the feet of the divine. That is the way to end suffering while we are operating in this world. If we go one step further, if we realize who we truly are, then in that case, if we study the Gita further, we realize that our own essential nature is all encompassing. The world as we experience it is only a reflection of our own mind. This is an even subtler teaching of the Gita. Once we learn that, then we will continue to do what we need to do in the world, but we will do it without being emotionally attached to it. We will do everything with great passion. We will do everything with great involvement. We will do everything we need to do. We will do things for the benefit of the totality rather than for selfish gains. This is what will happen. That's how I have understood how to go from an experience of suffering to an experience of release of all suffering. I hope whatever I have said so far, the comments I have made so far, have made sense to you. If they don't make sense to you, I'm not offended. Okay. By all means, ask questions and let us get clarity, all of us together. So, this entire program I do every other Sunday along with Kamal Kanji, it is not intended to teach you anything. I don't intend to teach anybody anything. All I intend to do is to share my experiences, is to share my thoughts, and I hope there will be a discussion which will bring all of us clarity. So, Kamal Kanji, कैसा लगा आपको? Shall we chat about this
एक्सीलेंट,
now?
बहुत बढ़िया, आपने बहुत क्लैरिटी से बताया। और अब जो भी हमारे ऑडियंस हैं, अगर वो क्वेश्चंस पूछें तो आप और हम कोशिश करेंगे, यथासंभव प्रयास करेंगे उसको
उत्तर
उनकी
देने की।
संतुष्टि के लिए उत्तर देने के लिए।
चलिए, अच्छा है। तो अगर किसी को कुछ पूछना होगा तो आप अपना हाथ ऊपर कर सकते हैं विद इन द screen, and then if you want to ask something, then we will unmute you, and thereafter you can ask your question. I thought my friend Dr. Dilip Kumar Markande wanted to ask something, so
He is
Dilip,
still trying to connect to his audio, so
still
he's
trying
not.
to connect to his audio.
Yeah.
चलिए ठीक है,
Yeah.
किसी और को कोई प्रश्न है? अगर कोई चैट में अगर कोई प्रश्न आया तो हम देखते हैं उसको।
इन द
एक
मेन टाइम,
question.
डॉक्टर विक्रम, कैन आई गिव अ लिटिल कमेंट?
हाँ बताइए प्लीज।
हाँ, तो मेरा कमेंट ये है, पेन इज द वर्स्ट enemy of the mankind. At the same time, it is a friend if we realize it, what it's going to teach us, what is it intending or trying to teach us. Pain is intending to teach us certain lesson, that what we are doing wrong in our life, as far as ahar, vihar, achar, vichar are concerned, we are definitely doing something wrong. And that we have to introspect, we have to do swadhyaya. Swadhyaya means somkadhyan, study of the self, not study of the books. Close our eyes and we have to go within and we have to see what we are doing wrong, which is resulting in this pain. So this is very important. That way it is a great friend. And anything, and another thing is, pain leads you to so many other, um, seeking. If you are a seeker, then you start seeking Lord. You become spiritual. You start finding the meaning of life and what is life, what is God, what is this, what is that. So it's a great teacher also. Uh, this is my message, that don't be scared of pain, don't be afraid of pain. Only sit back, go inside, find out the reason, and learn the lesson and move on. Thank you.
Correct. This is so beautifully put. See, in most people's life, some situation or the other will arise when such a question will be asked. That is what will happen. So even if everything is going well, I often tell this to my friends, everything is going well. Okay. So I have a very privileged kind of childhood. All of my needs are met. All of my wants are also met. My parents are loving me, and my parents are providing me whatever I want. I grow up to be a young man, and I'm very well educated. I get a nice job. I'm very happily married. One day, I'm jogging on the street. Okay. And suddenly, a little boy comes and asks me, Uncle, what is the time? Okay. Then suddenly, I wonder, how come you have called me uncle? Okay. Am I that old? So, within myself, I don't have any experience of becoming old. But somebody has called me old. So this is what happens. And then that shock will prompt me to look within and to try to figure out what has changed in me. Because within me, I have not really experienced any change. Because our essential self, my awareness of who I am, or my awareness of I am, that awareness doesn't change at all. I am alive. Okay, that aliveness, that doesn't change at all. So whatever I was as a child, the same awareness I had even when I was a teenager, the same awareness I had when I was an older adult, and the same awareness I have even now. That awareness has not changed at all, right? So when such a jolt happens, then we start wondering. So then we will come to a conclusion that this body seems to be changing, and the body has changed, because every time we look at the mirror over time, or even if we look at our own photographs, we will see that the body has changed, but I have not changed. So we clearly realize that there are two aspects of our own self. One is an unchanging aspect, and one is a changing aspect. So in Sanskrit, that is called Kshara and Akshara. Kshara means changing, and Akshara means not changing. So we start understanding ourselves as these two aspects. So the individual within me, the awareness of who I am within me, so I'm Vikram, that awareness remains the same. That is the Akshara principle within me. And my body has changed. So initially I was a child, then I was a teenager, then I was an adult, then I'm an older adult now. That has changed. So my body has changed. So I clearly realize that these two things exist within me. But then when we come to the last 5 verses of the 15th chapter of the Gita, Bhagwan clearly tells us, and this is an experience within ourselves also, that the same reality is divided into two, or seems to be divided into two. The same reality, which is completely eternal, seems to be divided into an Akshara principle. Most people will name that or term that as the individual soul, and the Kshara principle, which is my body. Okay. But our essential nature is beyond that. Okay. That principle is called the Purushottama. Purushottama is the ultimate reality. That ultimate reality, because of the superimposition, appears to be divided into Kshara and Akshara. That's what happens. I think Mandar Samvatsar, our friend here, wanted to ask a question. So Pooja, if you can kindly unmute Mandar.
Yeah, he is unmuted. Mandar, you go ahead, please.
Mandar, unmute please yourself. ऐकू येत नाही आवाज आम्हाला. Somehow we are not able to hear you at all. Maybe you are not connected with the Zoom call through internet. Maybe you are connected through your phone. So you may have to log back out, log back in, and connect using the internet. If you can do that, I would love to hear your question. But until then, we will try to take another question. If there is any other question, can you please check, Pooja?
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, Mandar, go ahead.
My question is, on one hand, what we are saying is that pain is essential because it is teaching us the things, taking us to a different level. And on the other hand, what is confusing me is we are saying that we have to cut it off so that the sufferings would be zero. So essential, it is essential, and again we are cutting it off. That is what is
Great. No, this can be confusing. So if you look at it from the physical perspective, okay, if you look at the pain from the physical perspective, the pain will happen. It will happen, about that there is no doubt. If the pain is unbearable, by all means take some painkiller or take some anesthetic or whatever. So I'm not advising that we should go into a surgery room and get the surgery done without the anesthetic. Not recommending that. Okay, by all means take the anesthetic, reduce the pain or make the pain bearable, and then get the surgery done. No doubt about that. Okay, I was just trying to analyze how pain and suffering are related. So when the mind is disconnected from the body, from where the pain is, then the mind does not experience the pain. Even when there is a pain, if that person gets a sedative, for example, and the person goes to sleep, during deep sleep, the pain will go away because the mind is no longer connected with the body. In fact, we ourselves are no longer connected with the mind. Only the subtlest portion of the mind, which is the ahamkara, that keeps active in the deep sleep. Okay, but the other aspects of mind, there are 4 aspects of mind. There is mana, buddhi, chitta, ahankar. Those 4 aspects of the mind, out of those 4, mana is the emotional aspect of mind. Okay, that aspect of mind is active during our dream state. The buddhi aspect of our mind, which is the intellect, which is the discriminatory faculty of our mind, that is alive during our, or that is active during our waking experience. So when we are talking to each other right now, our buddhi is predominant. Then there is a chitta aspect of our mind. Chitta basically is memory, a memory bank, memory or samskar of all the previous experiences we might have had, all of those together, assume that to be the hard disk of your computer. Okay, so all the data you have on that hard disk from whatever you have done in the past, okay, all of that data stored at one place, let us call that as the chitta. Based on that, some future things will also happen, right? So that is the chitta aspect of our mind. And the fourth thing is ahamkar. The ahamkar aspect of the mind is the doership aspect, where we think of ourselves as a separate entity, as a separate being, as the doer and the enjoyer. That is called ahamkar. So that sense of separateness is active even during the deep sleep in a subtle manner. See, because even during in the deep sleep, our digestion happens, our blood circulation happens, the hair will grow, nails will grow. All of these things keep happening even during deep sleep, right? So that aspect of our mind is called ahamkara. So all these four things together comprise the mind. Okay. So if our mind is disconnected with the body during the sleep, it is disconnected. So then, even if the body pains during the waking experience, in the deep sleep, the pain is not experienced because we have taken the mind away from the body. So that was the point I wanted to make, that if the mind is disconnected in any manner from the pain, then the suffering will not happen. Okay. Also, pain will happen during the waking experience, pain will happen, but then because the pain is happening, we will be compelled to figure out, to inquire why the pain is happening. Okay. So physical bodily pain is relatively easy to take care of. You can use an anesthetic and it will go away. But the subtler pain, the pains we have in our mind, okay, like if somebody insults me, for example, okay, somebody says something bad to me, somebody is rude to me, then that pain is experienced in the mind. So how do we go out of that? That takes some practice. All right. So the techniques we use in our case, the simple technique I tell people is, first, before we understand any of these subtle topics, it is essential for us to do some preparation to clear our mind. So, for example, when you want to do during your Diwali time, say if you want to decorate your house, so before you decorate the house, will you not want to clean it up? झाड़ू पोछा तो करोगे पहले. So initially you clean the house, take all the dirt out of the house, then you clean it up, polish it, and then you will bring some decoration, and then you will do the decoration in the house, isn't it? So understanding all of these subtle things about life is like the decoration of our life. Okay. But before we decorate our house, we have to do some initial steps of cleaning up. So what we do in our Sattva program is basically that cleanup process. That cleanup process, we do it from the gross to subtle. So the gross cleaning is relatively easy to understand and relatively easy to do also. Although for some people it is very difficult. So what do we tell? We tell people that please do not eat until you are hungry. Even this simple rule we are unable to follow in our life consistently. Just think how many times we eat when we are not hungry, just because it's time to eat, just because somebody is insisting we should eat something, just because we liked something. These are the reasons we eat. The only good reason and the sufficient reason to eat is I'm hungry. What this teaches us is we should consume only those things we really need, only when we need, and only to the extent we need them. That is the law of nature. This law of nature, unfortunately, most of us do not understand. Until we start practicing these simple laws of nature, the clarity of perception we need to understand some of these subtle things does not even happen. That is the reason we try to bring people with us on a journey where their experience of life changes from within. Most of the people who have gone through our program have realized that the way they used to think earlier the way they used to live earlier, the way they used to live to enjoy, that is not the goal of life. Okay, the goal of life is to realize who we are. Our essential nature is happiness. Our essential nature is bliss. Our essential nature is joy. Our essential nature in Sanskrit, it is called Ananda. That is our essential nature. But unfortunately, that essential nature gets covered by all kinds of coverings, which we have ourselves created because of our ignorance. That is what happens. So, to clarify all of these things, we need to undertake some practices so that we start following nature's laws. Once we start following nature's laws, then these subtle things become clearer and clearer to us. Okay. So, therefore, yes, pain is even inevitable. We will suffer, we will experience pain, but we don't necessarily have to suffer because of that pain. Okay. If we understand why the pain happens, then we will bear the pain, but we will not suffer mentally because of that. Suffering actually happens in the mind. Suffering doesn't happen in the body. The body doesn't suffer. If the body is anesthetized, then there is no suffering in the body. And when, see, when we leave the body is actually burned, is it not? Or in some other cultures, they will bury the body. So we will not bury you alive, right? Only when you leave the body, and only when the connection between you and the body is completely eradicated, only then we will either burn the body or bury the body. So that was the point. It's not that you will not experience pain or you should want to give up that pain. Pain will be experienced to the extent you bear it. You can bear it. You bear it. If it becomes unbearable, see what happens. Let's talk about this. Some people will want to commit suicide. Why do they commit suicide? Because they think that ending the body will be less painful than holding on to the body. So that is why our entire endeavor is always to reduce pain or eliminate pain. Actually, it is to eliminate suffering. Okay. So when we identify with the pain, then we suffer. And then we want to end that suffering. And we want to end that suffering in whatever way we know best. So some people will commit suicide. That's not the answer at all. Because suicide happens because we mistakenly assume ourselves to be the body. That's not correct. We are not the body. Dr. Goyal, I think you wanted to make a comment, please.
Yes, sir. I like to give a live example from my patients, and by that example, Mandarji will be able to understand the things in a proper perspective. One of my patient who was diabetic, chronic diabetic and chronic alcoholic too, obese, once came to me with an ulcer on the underside of his grade 2, let us say left grade 2. Now what happened? This fellow, because of the chronic diabetes, his nerves were damaged. He had a diabetic neuropathy. So once he had some injury while walking on his street or on in his home by some pebble or something like that, but he was not aware of it because he didn't have those pain signals as the nerves were damaged. So mind was not perceiving. Mind was not being given the signal that there is something wrong in the left grade too. And after many days or weeks, when lot of pus accumulated, started oozing, and people, family members saw the pus marks on the floor, and it was in stinking, very bad smell. We have that infection called pseudomonas, a very bad smelling bacteria. Then the whole family, including the patient, came to know that there is something wrong. So it is a perfect example of how the mind perceives, and if the mind is not denied to perceive by some neuropathy or by anesthetic, it is an example of the same happens when we anesthetize a particular area to perform a surgery. So this was anesthetized by the nature of the God himself uh, due to the diabetic neuropathy. So, and the second thing is when we cut off our connection, mind connection from the painful area or the body, then we don't perceive pain. As Dr. Vikram very rightly said, during deep sleep or during general anesthesia, when we are going to perform a big operation. And my own experience, I had suffered a disease, very painful disease uh, called ankylosing spondylitis. It's not simply spondylitis, it is ankylosing spondylitis. So we'll detail it some other day. But there was pain 24 into 7 into 365, severe pain, day in and day out. And this pain took me to my spiritual guru. Ultimately, I could found my spiritual guru, and my spiritual guru taught a special technique called Yoga Nidra. So when he made me to lie, he used to make me lie down on the floor, and uh, he used to give the guided Yoga Nidra instructions. So my mind was disconnected from my body, and I did not feel pain during those 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And when he used to say that now you open your eyes, come back, again I used to start feeling pain, but I was a little relaxed mentally, a lot of relaxation mentally, emotionally, and physically too. So by these two examples, uh, Mandarji, hope I am clear if you are able to get this message. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamal Kanji, for such a wonderful reply and comment. Are there any other questions, Pooja?
Yeah, I just received one where somebody says that what if the suffering is from the past where somebody lost a loved one, maybe their parent or their child or someone? How do you actually eliminate that suffering? It's easier
Correct.
said than done.
That's a very good question. You see, human beings are endowed, blessed with a very vivid sense of memory and also an incredible sense of imagination. So our mind is capable of living in the past memories, and in the future anxieties. Okay. What we need to realize is the past and the future do not really exist. What exists is the present. Okay. So we need to understand that the physical world keeps changing all the time. Okay. Our body keeps changing all the time. The physical world outside keeps changing all the time. The earth is spinning around itself all the time. The earth is spinning around the sun all the time. So the physical universe is in a state of dynamic movement. It's in a dynamic state of equilibrium. It's also in equilibrium. Okay, the earth has been rotating at its around its axis at the same speed for the past millions of years, and around the sun at the same speed again for millions of years. Okay, so this is all happening in the world, but within us we always have a sense of being steady. Okay, our sense of awareness and our awareness of who we are, that never really changes. Okay, now if we understand that the physical world is going to keep changing, so therefore the bodies will come and go. My body will also come and go. In fact, I have changed so many bodies. I used to have a little child's body, then I had a little boy's body, then I had a teenager's body, then I had a young adult's body, then I myself had an older adult's body, then I have a middle-aged body now, right? So my bodies have changed. So these bodies are changing within me. I am not within the body, and I'm certainly not the body. Okay. So even when the body leaves, nothing is going to happen to me. Okay. So as long as I understand that the body will go one day, someday the body will disappear completely, but there is no change in me, nothing happens to me. Within this body, or within me, all of these experiences are happening. All the changes are happening within me. I am not in those changes. Once we understand this, then even though there is a loss of a body. You see, only the person's body has disappeared. Okay, the person, his memory, his spirit, still there, isn't it? A lot of times I say to people, I mean, with God's grace, both my parents are still alive and I wish them a long life. Okay, but I realize that they are going to leave their body someday. So am I. So are you. All of us. This body will perish, but I am not the body. Okay, I am the pure spirit. And that pure spirit is infinite. And that's the only reality there is. In fact, within that reality, all of these different bodies appear and disappear, appear and disappear. Okay, there is no difference between me and that total reality. That is the ultimate teaching of the Gita. Sarvasya chaham hृदि सन्निविष्टो मत्तस्मृति ज्ञानमपोहनम च वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यो वेदांतकृत वेदविदेव चाहम. This is the 15th verse of the 15th chapter. If we focus on that, if we meditate upon that, then we will realize that bodies will come and go, but I and the essential reality remains the same. Fundamentally, there is no difference between me and you, between one soul, one jiva, and another soul, another jiva. That difference is apparent. That difference appears, that difference is experienced only when we are awake. That difference disappears when we are in deep sleep. So we have to go from this first misunderstanding, I'm the body, I'm not. Second misunderstanding, I am a separate entity, separate jiva, separate from you, I'm not. We have to go further than that. During our day-to-day life, during our day-to-day waking experience, we have to behave in the manner where we are apart. That sense of duality will be apparent during our waking experience. Okay, and we have to live our life, live our waking experience under certain rules of conduct. Okay, that we call as dharma. Okay, where how should I relate to you? How should you relate to me? How should I behave with you? How should you behave with me? That is based on dharma. Okay, but once we realize that our essential nature is one with everything else, then this suffering of losing a close one, losing a near one, will calm down. So for that, satsang is necessary. For that, this subtle inquiry, this subtle understanding is necessary. Kamal Kanji, I think you wanted to say something about this. No, it's okay.
This is, uh, the sense of attachment with the body, your own body and your loved ones, is very, very, so strong. It is after a lot of study, sitting in the holy feet of a guru, learning things, it's still very difficult to lose this sense. And that is the only way to eliminate the suffering, unless we identify that we are not this body, we are not this mind. The person who has gone was not a body and mind. He was related to us, say my son, in this birth. Gita, or our Hindu mythology or scriptures believe in reincarnation. So we have taken so many births and we may take so many births again. So in the last birth, the fellow, if I have lost my son, maybe that he was my father or he was my friend. So, but this realization, to dawn upon this realization, is not easy, and this needs constant practice, constant study, constant contemplation, constant introspection, constant swadhyaya, study of the self.
Absolutely. This
But
is so perfectly said, Dr. Goel. This is exactly what we need to understand. So, the question, I don't know who asked the question, but I hope we have answered the question to your satisfaction. I see one other hand here by Samir Supnekar. Why don't we
Yeah.
unmute Samir, and Samir, you can ask your
Samir is
question, please.
yeah, he's unmuted. Samir, go ahead, please.
Yeah, my question is it true that the soul is part of the Brahmand? If so, then if somebody hurts the other person, then his soul suffers. Does the Brahmand get affected by this, or does the suffering of the soul get registered in the Brahmand? How does it affect the Brahmand, if at all it does? So, your answer.
All right. So, I'm assuming by Brahmanda, you mean the Brahma, which is the ultimate reality. In the ultimate reality, there are no changes. There is no suffering. Okay. The jiva or the individual soul appears as when the Brahma is superimposed with the Panchakoshas. Okay. It is just a superimposition. It's a reflection of the reality. Just like if you see in a bowl of water, the sun will be reflected. Okay. And the reflected sun in that bowl of water will also emit some light. About that, there is no doubt, isn't it? To think that that reflection is real is exactly how this jiva concept happens. So the ultimate reality is shining through me or shining through this body. This body is made up of 5 koshas. There are 5 sheets. Okay. That's why, because of those 5 sheets, that reality appears to be a jiva. Okay. So when an apparent jiva hurts another apparent jiva, as long as this jiva has a sense of doership, then there is a sense of good or bad, good or evil, papa, punya, all of those things will happen. Okay. So initially in the Gita, Arjuna said that if I kill my guru, if I kill my father's uncle, then will I not be committing sin? Is it not sinful to kill your own guru? Is it not sinful to kill your own father's uncle? So what did Krishna say? Nothing doing. You are not the doer. Karmani evadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Then whatever you do, you dedicate that to me. Yat karoshi yadashnasi yat juhosi dadasi yat yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurushva madarpanam. So whatever you do in your life, you ultimately dedicate that to me. Ultimately, you keep that on my feet. Okay. If we live our life in this manner, then there is no papa, there is no punya. Okay. The war happened. At Arjuna's hands, Dronacharya and Bhishmacharya were killed. But there was no papa for Arjuna, because Arjuna became only an instrument in the hands of Bhagwan Krishna. That is how we have to live our life. Then there is no karma, then there is no papa, there is no punya. But as long as I am the doer, or I feel I am the doer, then there will be papa and punya. So then I have to live according to dharma. But at that time, Arjuna's dharma was to protect the right side of dharma, to uphold the dharma. That was his duty. That is why, while upholding the dharma, even though he had to kill his guru and his father's uncle, there was no sin, there was no papa, because he was fighting a dharma yuddha. So he was on the side of right and he was fighting the wrong, which was right and wrong according to the dharma of that time. Okay, so even in today's life, we have to always adhere to the dharma and discard the adharma. Okay, if we keep doing that, then there is no papa or punya. And in any case, at the end of it, some mistakes we will make. We have to dedicate the fruits of all of our actions at the feet of the divine. Then, when we live our life with this kind of sense of dedication, devotion, and a sense of service towards everybody, then our life is fulfilled. That is the answer to your question. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming to our program. It's been
Yeah,
an
there's just
hour
one
of one
one
more
last
question.
question. Yeah, just last. So Nana asks how the type of diet impacts mind and ultimately suffering. What type of diet and which food eliminates suffering?
Great question. See, a lot of times people will ask me, how come all of your questions ultimately lead to diet? Because you see, to perceive things the way they are, to clarify our perception, to purify our mind, it is essential we purify our diet. Essential. Okay, so what kind of food will help us towards that direction? The way I have understood, see, I'm a process engineer, a chemical engineer, environmental engineer. I have studied nature. So, based on that knowledge, I have understood that if we make our digestion process or our process of feeding our bodies efficient, because in nature there is no inefficiency. So, if we make the process of feeding our body to be efficient, then that efficiency will lead to excellent absorption of that food into our body, excellent conversion of that food into energy, excellent conversion of that food into what we call the ojas, which is the life energy, the prana shakti within our body. That also helps clarify our mind. The kind of food we recommend people should eat is what comes from nature without much processing. So in my personal case, most of my food is either fruits or nuts, fruits and seeds, because those are the two products of nature that nature wants us to have. It produces those in plenty. Nature wants us to consume those and use some of those seeds to grow the same plant again, because the plant cannot move from one place to another. So the fruit of the plant is basically the bait the plant uses for propagating itself. So the plant is telling me that come, pick this fruit, eat the fruit and throw the seed somewhere so that I will grow somewhere else. That is how nature works. Okay. If we live our life in this manner, so the fundamental rules we should follow are: number one, what kind of food is good for us? The food that nature produces ready for us to eat. That is the best. If we have to process it in some manner, then it is not all that good. It's not that you should not do that or you cannot do that. You may have to do that. In some cases, when fresh fruits are not available, what will you eat? You will have to have some grain. Grain you cannot eat without cooking because you don't have the patience to keep it in the mouth long enough and chew it so that it will start digesting. Okay, so you have to cook. So traditionally, there are cooking methods. You have to cook your rice in a certain manner in an open pot, and then throw away the excess water, and then whatever remains, you let it steam in itself and then eat. That kind of rice will not make you fat. Rice has to be cooked in that manner. Dal also has to be cooked in that manner. Vegetables, many vegetables can be eaten raw. Some vegetables that cannot be eaten raw, you can gently stir fry them or gently steam them. But ideally, if you eat fresh, locally available, ripe fruit and nuts or seeds, I soak them overnight so that they are easier to digest. Eat only when you're hungry and stop eating when you burp once. That is the signal for you to stop, which means you have only consumed what you need, not beyond that. Don't consider the process of eating as a pleasurable process, as your birthright for which you have come on this earth and live to eat. No, don't live to eat. Eat to live, because you have to maintain the body. So therefore, we should eat to live. So whatever amount we require, we should eat. When we are hungry, we must eat. Okay, but we must not eat more than necessary. That is the rule. So if you eat either natural food or freshly cooked food. Freshly cooked food means you cook it and you eat it within 1 hour. Done. Don't keep it in the fridge and then microwave it and then eat. Don't do that. That is not good food for you at all. Your body will actually find it more troublesome and require more energy to get rid of that junk than it will get anything out of it. So the amount of energy and nutrition we get from stale food is nothing compared to the amount of energy we need to throw all the junk out from the body. Whereas if you eat a fresh fruit, local, seasonal, fresh, and sweet, it will digest in no time and you will feel great. You'll feel light. So we need to understand these rules of nature. We need to follow these consistently, which help us clarify our perception. Okay. This is called sattvic food. That is the reason our initiative is called Sattva. We want to increase the amount of Sattva within us so that our perception becomes clearer. We understand how this world operates. We understand who we are. The misunderstandings about ourselves, about the world, about what we call as God, and about spiritual practice, all of those misunderstandings are completely eliminated. That is the reason we run this whole initiative. So I do appreciate your question. Thank you so much, Naina, as well as all the participants who have come here today. It has been a true pleasure. Thank you very much, and we shall meet once again in the next couple of weeks. Have a wonderful 2 weeks ahead.